Drill Sergeant Caprice looked over the dozen recruits neatly lined up in front of him and shook his head. Every year, the newest batch of aspiring mech warriors seemed to get younger and less aware of the world. Maybe it was their idealism mixed with his advanced age. His days as a mech warrior were long over thanks to the wounds he received fighting the wolves a decade ago. Ever since then, he was cursed with having just enough knowledge to be useful as a teacher to others. The base was bustling with both aerospace flights and battle mechs in various states of training and repairs. Behind him, Caprice could hear the distinct sound of a knee actuator which was grinding in what was likely a catapult or a cataphract. He didn't look to find out which, but he did let the recruits take in the sight for a few more moments before calling them to attention. Today is your first day as a mech warrior trainee. I assume you're all smart enough to know who I am and to read your basics before you got here, or else you wouldn't be here. Am I correct? The group quickly responded in unison, Yes, Drill Sergeant! A marauder, painted green with gold accents, exited a hangar, and it was close enough to feel the impact tremors through the ground. More than a few cadets let their eyes wander to watch it. Caprice let them for a few moments before stating, While that may be your dream, you have a long road ahead of you before you get anywhere near a high-precision piece of technology like that Marauder. First, you're going to get to know our unit's pride and joy. Sergeant Caprice waved his hand, and the cadets turned their heads to see the matte gray 20-ton Stinger step out from behind a hangar. He watched their faces turn from excitement to disappointment and nearly lost his composure with a smile. He continued his speech as the cadets watched the battle mech walk across the tarmac roughly 100 meters from their position. He said, Over the next year, you're going to get to know every square centimeter of this machine. You're going to know its capabilities, ins and outs, and every strand of myomer cable before you even touch it. You get me? The group quickly responded in unison, Yes, Drill Sergeant. On cue, the Stinger broke out into a run, quickly reaching the end of the ferrocrete tarmac of the base, sliding to a stop and then running back. After a few seconds, the Mechwarrior fired the Stinger's jump jets and it leapt up into the sky on plumes of smoke and fire. The cadets watched with newfound awe as the mech landed without slowing its pace, running back toward the group. The speeding battle mech closed the distance, and what looked puny far away was now intimidating as it slid to a stop just meters from where Sergeant Caprice was standing. He didn't even flinch. The cockpit of the Stinger popped open, and the Mechwarrior dropped the soft ladder down the back of the mech. The cadets stood in silence as she took off her helmet and walked up to Caprice. The two commanding officers shook hands, and the Mechwarrior turned to the cadets. Her jet black hair was cropped short, and by every measure she looked like serious business. With a frown on her lips, the Mechwarrior's green eyes scanned the collection of nervous cadets before she spoke. Welcome to mech school. Let's get to work. Though few mech warriors seek to spend their careers inside the cramped confines of a Stinger's cockpit, many thousands, if not millions over the centuries, learned the basics of controlling a battle mech from inside of one. The Stinger, a 20-ton technological achievement of steel, myomer, and fusion power, was constructed in such great numbers that it's estimated as the second most common battle mech in the inner sphere, just behind the Wasp. Earthworks Incorporated designed the Stinger as a direct challenge to the Wasp, which was a tremendously popular 20-ton entry into the battle mech marketplace. In fact, it was so similar to its competition that General Mechanics Incorporated sued Earthworks over it. Though the lawsuit ended up going nowhere after years of litigation, it turned out that there was a marketplace for both the Wasp and the Stinger. It was the late 25th century, and every house military and aspiring regional power wanted to get their hands on inexpensive scout battle mechs. Both the Wasp and the Stinger sold like hotcakes. Hotcakes. I really shouldn't write these scripts while hungry. The first Stinger rolled off the Earthworks assembly lines in 2479, almost a century before the formation of the Star League. The plucky scout mech sold so well that the licenses for production were sold off across the inner sphere, and still demand could not be met. Some estimate that roughly 200,000 Stingers were produced over the first 400 years of its production history. Most of the time it was used as a scout or for recon work, but as time passed, the Stinger was also frequently used as a low-cost training mech for green mech warriors. It was relatively easy to learn how to pilot, it offered low-threat practice for moving and firing weaponry, and it could be replaced when a green pilot inevitably walked one off a cliff and ended up jump jetting into the floor of a quarry. I'm not going to take any questions on this curiously specific event, so don't ask. Built around an Earthworks STG frame and a GM120 fusion engine, the Stinger can hit a top speed of 91.6 kilometers per hour. As we're going to see, this is incredibly important as armor is more of a theory than an actuality for the Stinger. With just 3 tons of Reese 100 standard armor, anything larger than a standard medium laser is going to penetrate any of the sections of the Stinger. I've said it before, but ABM is the key for survival for our dear Stinger. Always be moving. Ideally at top speed or leaping on the Stinger's Chilton 360 jump jets. That leap, up to 180 meters, can make a big difference, especially in an urban environment where Stingers have tended to thrive. The original Stinger, designated the 3R, carried 10 standard heatsinks, which were more than enough to tackle the heat generated by the single Omicron 3000 medium laser and 2 LFN Lindblad machine guns. Not having to worry about heat generation, new Mechwarriors could focus on other systems and aiming that medium laser. Obviously, this loadout isn't going to be racking up lots of mech kills, but keep in mind it's a 20-ton battle mech with inner sphere technology. If used properly as a scout mech and for clearing away those bothersome squishy infantry, the Stinger was quite effective. Now, while it may be an in-universe starter mech, I do want to point out that it's generally a bad idea to start out new players in light mechs. It might seem like a quick way to get somebody to experience the game, but with the nature of dice rolling, a mech like the Stinger can be taken out by a single roll of the dice. It can also create the false impression of the impact that random chance can have on the game. It's of course just my personal opinion, but start new players out in mediums or heavies for the better first gameplay experience. The fact that the 2 $26 starter boxes have medium mechs in them is not an accident. The production of the Stinger continued throughout the Star League years and into the Succession Wars. The brutal, often apocalyptic levels of conflict whittled down the numbers of almost every mech out there, though light mechs were destroyed in droves. Their low-cost and inexperienced Mechwarriors tended to be used as fodder in set-piece battles between smoking room generals who never personally witnessed a shot being fired. In 3019, in a raid on the planet Fallon II, the 7th Crucis Lancers employed a mass wave attack of Wasps and Stingers against a recon lance from McKinnon's raiders. The attack was a complete disaster, with every one of the light mechs being left as wreckage in the field. The organizer of the attack, a Captain Mercer Ravinian, insisted that it would have worked against a less experienced foe. This proves once again that even in the 31st century, people have problems with interpreting data and accepting responsibility for their own poor decisions. The Stinger would see many variants, official and field refits over the centuries. New weapons could be swapped, armor increased, and new technologies often tested on the inexpensive mech, which made a great guinea pig. We're not going to cover them all in this video, but we will touch upon some notable designs that either have history tied to them or are particularly fun to play on the tabletop. Our first official variant is one of the more popular field refits, which ended up being incorporated into production lines. The Stinger 3G was first spotted in 2581, and it shifted the mech's battlefield mission a bit by swapping the 2 machine guns for a second standard medium laser installed in the mech's left arm. It also adds an additional ton of armor to the machine, slightly improving its battlefield lifespan. While the second medium laser does significantly improve the possible damage against armored targets like other mechs, in universe, the 3G could run into heat issues if Mechwarriors push the weaponry too hard. And you're not going to run into that issue on the tabletop, and that's great because the 3G is a great way to bring a total possible 10 damage per turn to a fight on a 696 platform that only costs 674 battle value. That's pretty cheap. Whether you're going with the 3G or the original 3R, you're still going to want to avoid direct combat with other mechs whenever possible. While the mech is speedy, all it will take is 1 or 2 lucky shots with a large pulse laser or a PPC to send the mech to the scrap heap. The life of the light Mechwarrior may be glorious, but they're also usually short. Our next official variant is the Stinger C, the clan upgrade to the battle mech which debuted in 2832. The mech structure was upgraded to endosteel and the weight was spent on slightly improved armor and the addition of a small pulse laser in the right arm. The medium laser is upgraded to the ER version, improving the mech's range, and the machine gun ammunition was cut to just a half ton of case-protected reloads. Even with a warmer ER medium laser, the mech's 10 single heatsinks could handle both lasers firing consistently. While this Clan Hellhorses project was largely used as a training mech, just as the Stinger was used in the Inner Sphere, It could be particularly nasty against infantry when that small pulse laser and machine guns are used to clear fighting positions. If you're into playing early clan stuff, check out the Stinger C as a reliable and inexpensive scout. And if you want to build an IlClan Wolf Empire unit, the Stinger C has gone back into production very recently, so you're golden there too. Our next stop on the upgrade tour is in 3050 with the Stinger 5M. Still produced from lines across the inner sphere and into the periphery states, the Stinger 5M represented a small step forward in technology. The use of endosteel bought enough mass on the mech to create an alternative to the 3G and the 3R that is a bit more of a niche mech due to the installation of an anti-missile system in the right arm. While it did protect the Stinger and possibly its nearby allies from incoming missile fire, there was a substantial critique that the mech really would have been better served with more offensive weaponry. An additional half-ton of armor is nice, but we're talking about just 2 extra points of armor on each side torso and bumping the head armor up to 8. The standard medium laser was retained in the right arm, but the 2 machine guns were replaced with a standard flamer. While I'm personally not a big fan of the 5M, it does get some points for trying to think outside the box a bit with the loadout. It could be useful as a part of a scouting lance or as an urban pacification unit. For our next variant, we're going to travel to the Taurian Concordat, which wanted to produce a Stinger with significant offensive punch. Though the design looked feasible, the Taurians lacked the production lines necessary for the mech's ferrofibrous armor. Thankfully, the ever-helpful Word of Blake stepped up to fill the gap, and the Stinger 5R was born. The first units marched off the lines in 3067 and immediately offered a unique, if temporary, boost in offensive capability. The ER medium laser in the right arm is not unusual, however the addition of 2 Death Blossom 15-pack rocket launchers boosted the mech's offensive power up to 35 damage in a one-shot opportunity. Ideal for ambushes and other situations where the Stinger 5R could fire and then flee the area, these mechs were a force multiplier, especially when working in lances or larger packs. It's a little bit of a gimmick mech, but I like it because it fits with the plucky nature of the Taurian Concordat being willing to try just about anything to survive. Another interesting bit of the 5R is a replacement of the standard head and cockpit assembly with one with a full head ejection system. This can be a lifesaver in the Stinger, as it is known for having a cramped cockpit that can be difficult to get in and out of, even when not under fire or in an emergency. Overall, I think this version of the Stinger is interesting and could be a wild card on the battlefield. If you want to try something unique and throw off your opponent, the Stinger 5R might be for you. As we advance down the timeline, the variants of the Stinger start to incorporate the XL engine to reduce the mass of the engine as much as possible. While normally I'm wary of the Inner Sphere XL engine on mechs, it makes a little bit more sense on the very light mechs that aren't going to survive being hit anyway. The most recent version of the Stinger to hit the battlefields was designated the Stinger 6R. The 120 XL engine boosts the top speed to 120 km per hour, which is great, and additional jump jets allow the Stinger to leap up to 240 meters. With the XL engine, endosteel, and 10 double heat sinks, the price tag of the 6R goes up in order to wield an ER medium laser in that right arm, along with 2 heavy machine guns, 1 in each arm. The appeal here is definitely the speed and ability to jump 8 hexes. The 6R's damage is middling even at extremely close range. I could see it being quite annoying in an urban environment or in terrain of differing heights where your opponents are hemmed in and unable to get a clear shot on you. Now we can't wrap things up without an IlClan era MF variant, so let's dive in. Envisioning this as a Rosselhog Dominion mech, we have a little tiny bit of clan tech involved. Sorry not sorry for those of you who don't like that. It's the IlClan era, clan technology is more and more common. With the goal of creating an infantry or light mech hunter, I have taken the Stinger 6 chassis and tweaked it. The 160 XL engine can move the Stinger 6 MF up to 12 hexes in a turn, and the jump jets can help it leap half of that. With mobility covered, mass is saved through the use of endosteel, and the remaining weight is dedicated to both armor and weaponry. It has 3.5 tons of standard armor, and in the right arm there are 3 clan small pulse lasers that can reach out to 6 hexes. Backing them up in the left torso are a trio of Inner Sphere ER small lasers. The alpha strike on this, at 5 or fewer hexes, would be 18, with half of that damage at that -2 to hit roll that pulse lasers provide. With the 10 double heat sinks, it won't overheat either, so you can do that as long as your mech can avoid the return fire. Overall, I think the Stinger 6MF would be a fun little monster of a mech that could be quite nasty if you get up behind a heavier mech. It would also be useful for clearing out infantry, other light mechs, and battle armor with those 6 lasers hitting more often than not. If you're looking for a Stinger with a bit more punch and enjoy running 12 hexes per turn, try out the 6MF. I've included the link to the record sheet in a Dropbox link in the video description. The Stinger has a strong BattleTech legacy, and I'm enthusiastic concerning its continued presence in the universe through its updated refits as well as through the Stinger 2C now being produced by the Raven Alliance. The future looks bright for one of our favorite plucky 20-tonners. Now before we go, I want to share this interesting anecdote from a specific Stinger. On Amity, a planet traditionally within the holdings of the Free Worlds League, an ancient Stinger stands in the cemetery of an old house of worship called St. Cyril's. For centuries, it has been left to rust and gradually disintegrate. There is a headstone at the mech's feet, but any inscription that might have been chiseled into it had worn away long ago. The Stinger took on a supernatural meaning to the locals who regularly showed up to pray for the sons and daughters lost to military conflict. One story passed down suggests that the mech weeps blood from the corners of its ferroglass viewport and has done so ever since the Star League crumbled. On that somber note, if you have a favorite Stinger variant, please do share it in the video comments. If you have an awesome story of a Stinger swinging way above its weight, I love hearing those as well. Thank you for coming out to chat about BattleTech today. It's a true honor to be in a place where I can make these videos and hopefully be value added for the community. If you thought the video was worthwhile, hitting the like and subscribe buttons is a mostly painless way to let me know that I'm doing well, and the YouTube algorithm will be happier too. Another thanks to the channel members who go above and beyond to directly financially support this and all other content on the channel. I cannot do this without you, and I appreciate it. Until we meet again, take care and go make the world a slightly better place today and tomorrow.